Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Fitness Pollinator podcast. I'm here with mobility expert Matt Ibrahim from Mobility 101. And thanks for coming on, Matt. So excited to talk to you. We've been in touch a little bit over the last few months, I'd say, and I was excited when you proposed the topic because, being that it's only my fourth episode, I haven't touched on mobility at all yet, and I've been following you on Facebook and YouTube, and your information is fantastic, so I love to get people on that know more about something than I do. Not that I know everything about everything, but it's great to have experts like you on, so thank you.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
So I was on your website, and I guess maybe your motto or a tagline, you had rehabilitation meets performance. So I just want to know, what is Mobility 101? I think maybe you would say your mission statement, I'll quote it here from the website, is the ultimate education tool for learning proper movement mechanics and injury prevention techniques in order to improve your overall health and performance. So just tell me a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, great. So my big thing is, I think in our field of training, healthcare, and fitness and overall performance, there's this big gap, right? And this whole bridging of the gap needs to be created where not only are we all on the same page as, healthcare professionals, but also in educating the people and the general population, athletes and clients that we deal with on a daily basis. What I mean by that is every human being should have the ability to tap into their overall human movement potential. Like, my big thing is helping them optimize their movement and their performance, through whether it's injury prevention techniques, fixing their posture, some biomechanics, some, realigning some asymmetries, whatever the issue may be. My big thing is helping them fix that so they can optimize their overall level of human performance and movement. And I'm a big believer that there's a wide open gap right now from, post-rehabilitation or post-physical therapy or post-treatment to returning to pre-injury levels. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I think ACL is a very simple topic to talk about. ACL surgery happens, and you go to the doctors, you get your checkup and everything, and then you go to a physio to receive treatment, right? And let's say you get treated for 4 to 6 months, and then your insurance stops covering you for whatever reason, because now you can function normally again, but you're not back to pre-injury levels. So there's a kind of a gray area here where post 4 to 6 months to return to pre-injury levels, there's a gap. And my goal, whatever the injury is to bridge that gap for you. So hold your hand and guide you along in the right direction rather than pushing you over the ledge and having you guess with all these question marks instead. So I guess Mobility 1 was started to help people, educate them, the 101, the whole aspect of teaching, educating, and guiding in terms of how to bridge that gap from rehabilitation to performance. And, mobility is one of the areas we can work on in accordance to injury prevention, prehab and rehab exercises, proper posture, proper movement mechanics, and stuff of that nature.
Wow. There's a lot more to it than, just one word, mobility. But so tell me, how do you define mobility? A lot of times people see the word mobility and they think it's just interchangeable with flexibility. Okay, I'm going to go do a hamstring stretch and that's going to help improve my mobility. But what's the difference? What is mobility?
So you'll see, great question. You'll see a lot of different answers, responses, beliefs, descriptions, and definitions. The way I term it, and I believe Dr. Charlie Weingroff terms it this way, the ability for a joint to move freely in the presence of change, right? So the ability for the joint to move freely given, what range of motion it currently has access to. So I think mobility, I think joint. I think ankle joint, knee joint, hip capsule joint. I think spine. I think shoulder, elbow, so on and so forth. When I think flexibility, yes, is there some overlapping? Of course. But when I think about flexibility, and it's funny because the NSCA CSCS textbook does not really have a defined definition of mobility. It only talks about flexibility, or at least I didn't see it.
Yeah.
A flexibility to me is how it's talking about like the ability for the muscle to move in certain ways, the musculature essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really think about it, the joint, in my mind, is a little more important because that's where the integrity comes into play. If a joint isn't supple enough, like Dr. Kelly Starrett talks about, or can access certain ranges at certain periods of time, whether it's cold or hot or warmed up or whatnot, but flexibility, it aids in it and it overlaps, but I think mobility is a little more pivotal because it's the exact source of the movement. Like when you do a lunge, I think it's more important to have, range of motion in the knee, knee flexion, hip flexion, and stuff of that nature. Yes, you're going to want, the quad and the hamstring to work synergistically and the glute and stuff like that. But the joint to me is a little more important when it comes down to, overall health and not just how strong your muscles are.
Mm-hmm. Or what range of motion you can get into with somebody pushing your leg. Like a lot of times,
exactly.
when I try to make the distinction, I say flexibility is the maybe the passive range of motion, but mobility is the active range of motion that you're able to move your limb through on your own accord.
That's the key, and Dr. Andrea Spina up in Canada, he talks about this. Mobility, yes, people are using bands and distractions and all these cool things there, and I do it too, and it's great. But is that really mobility? Well, it depends.
Yeah.
But with mobility, you have to have movement. There has to be a level of you're changing from one place to another. You have to be moving, whether it's through oscillations, actual dynamic movement, like preparation, stuff like that. There has to be a movement component within the mobility if we're talking mobility. It has to be involved.
Cool. So a few minutes ago, you mentioned, the relationships between mobility and posture, performance, pain, recovery, all that. And I've been, as part of my graduate work, I, read a lot of the scientific literature, and I see the relationship between all these things is really complex and even changing, in recent years, our understanding of the interrelationships between all these things. So can you just talk a little bit about how mobility affects all these other aspects of human performance?
All right. So when we talk mobility, I think it's important to not overlook the fact that stability has to be there as well. There's a relationship that needs to be appreciated and respected between mobility and stability because, in essence, they work in accordance with each other. So, for example, a simple scenario, or example rather, you take a rock and you take it's a regular rubber band. If you wrap the rubber band around the rock and you pull that rubber band a little bit and the rock comes with it, well, that band represents mobility, so it has a little bit of mobility. The rock lost its stability, so it doesn't have a lot of stability. I would say that's not a stable joint. It doesn't have integrity. Now, take it again, a different rock and a different band. Take that band, wrap it around, and you pull that band back. There's a lot of mobility there, and that rock is staying in place, which means it has stability. That is a joint with a high level of integrity.
Dude,
so what that means is...
That's an incredible analogy.
Yeah, so I got that one. Charlie Weingoff has said that in his Training Equals Rehab lecture. That's from Charlie, not from me.
You take credit for that, Matt.
Say it again?
You take credit for it. Don't tell anybody.
All right, you can delete that then. So the way I look at it is, and I think this comes up a lot in something as simple as a hip hinge, a squat pattern.
Yep.
People will squat differently because they have different femoral head, different, whatever's going on in the acetabulum, whatever the hip region is and all that, they'll move differently based on what anatomy has given them in the hip socket.
Yep.
So how is that related to mobility and hip stability? Hip mobility, hip stability. Well, if someone can get down real nice and low, stay on the heels, and spread those knees out with a lot of weight, let's say 300, 400, 500 pounds, well, they're definitely mobile enough in hip capsule, and they're definitely stable enough in hip capsule because the external load is pretty sufficient. Now, if you can get real low but only put on minimal loads after a period of time trying to get higher and you can't go any higher, well, you have to ask yourself, although the capsule has some mobility in the hip, is the stability sufficient enough to merit that? And vice versa, if I said, well, I can't get really low, but I can throw on a crap ton of weight, which you see some powerlifters do because they'll use their brute strength, aka stability, versus that mobility that they're lacking in. So I think that relationship, it doesn't get brought to light enough. And I think because the word mobility is a hotter topic, it gets, oh my God, mobility, like let's talk about it. Whereas stability, it's, oh, you're going to jump on a booster ball and stabilize yourself. Well, it's much deeper than that.
Yeah, that's cool. I know like Gray Cook always talks about mobility and stability, and mobility comes first, but I think that's a little bit simplistic. I think that they feed off of each other, and you can't really say which one comes first. It more depends on the particular individual that you're working with, because somebody could have a hypermobile elbow or shoulder, and then they need more stability. So you can have the rock and then the band, but if the band pulls too much, then your performance is gonna suffer.
Exactly. So to tie this in to the performance and posture and all those other things that are pretty vital in our life is, we need to see, I think Mike Boyle and Gray Cook broke this down, like the joint by joint system.
Yep.
We need mobility here, stability here, and why, and this and that, and how it connects. That's very important because our levels of performance, our ability to do certain things, whether it's performance in life, in fitness, in sports, in other venues, it's going to be dependent on our joints and what levels of stability and mobility we have at each joint. And also, I think the relationship with that, with that stuff, and also with what we're given, like we cannot change our anatomy. We can change our musculature, but we can't change our anatomy for the most part. I mean, some things, like if we have a bony block up in our hip socket, you can't change that. That's not going to change. No matter how many squats you do, it may actually become painful and you may need surgery depending on how heavy you're lifting. So I think how it affects our posture and our performance is knowing and respecting what each joint is given and what you can work with and have access to, and what you have to know, hey, look, I can't access anymore here. This is the most I'm given, and what I need to work on, maybe stability more than mobility. And also stuff like posture where, you don't necessarily need a ton of mobility to have certain postures, but posture is important because if you can enter certain ranges of, flexibility, mobility, and kind of in accordance with posture, that will allow you to, respect certain positions. If we can understand position, then we have the ability to explore other positions that can feed off of those. And that's why I think with mobility, it touches all of them. But at the end of the day, I think everyone has the right to and should explore positions. What works for them may not work for someone else, whether they're sitting at a desk, standing up tall, on their phone, on the computer, through exercise, through stretching. It's all kind of all-encompassing. It's just a matter of appreciating and respecting the different areas and how they kind of overlap.
Yeah, that's even we were talking before we started recording about your personal experience with powerlifting, and you said you had pain conventional deadlifting for years, and just a simple switch to the sumo deadlift radically changed both your strength and your ability to perform the exercise comfortably.
Yeah.
And so, if you, you go on a website and they say, oh, everybody needs to deadlift, and nobody ever talks about the sumo deadlift. So everybody needs to deadlift with a hip width apart stance, and but that's not going to be the true for everybody. And some people may be able to be a lot more comfortable in a sumo stance, and so you have to kind of individualize it.
Good time.
And even like you can do all the mobility work you want, but you, based on your particular anatomy, certain lifts are going to be better for you than others, maybe.
Exactly, and you just hit on it. And I wrote a piece for Tony Genticle recently about prioritizing your mobility. There's these blogs now and these podcasts and these videos now where, everyone wants to do mobility. It's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But, if you have pretty supple and pretty able, ankle range of motion and mobility, does it make sense to crank down on that every single time you work out? Well, I don't know if that's the best decision and it's going to help you the most.
Right.
Whereas if your ankle mobility is sufficient and your hip mobility is lacking, where you're spending all your time on ankle mobility, well, you just answered your own question. So having a prioritized list of why you're doing what you're doing in terms of mobility, recovery, stretching, warming up is going to help you leaps and bounds more than just doing it because someone said you should do it.
Right. It's so even if someone super smart, Tony Gentlecore writes about the best ankle mobilization. Well, if you already have mobile ankles, you need to address what's limiting you the most. And then it's not going to do you any good to spend. I mean, it will do you good to spend X number of minutes in your warm up every day working mobility or in between sets. But if you spend a full hour doing it, like there's other stuff you need to do.
For sure.
But I really liked what you said about, so you call it Mobility 101, but mobility is your umbrella term for all this other important stuff.
Yeah, definitely. At least that's what I try to make people understand. And I think the other part of Mobility 101, like the one-on-one portion, that to me holds a little more ground because I think that, and you and I were discussing this before we were recording, that our field, there's a huge gap in terms of educating and teaching and guiding us as healthcare professionals, like teaching and guiding and educating the people, like the general population that need to know the whys.
Yeah.
There's a huge gap there, and I think that we need to educate them in a way that is simple and it's quickly applicable and it's just dummied down so that they can understand it and apply it right away rather than getting to all anatomical and sciencey on them.
That's my number one goal. So it's great to hear somebody else say that. Every day I'm in the university gym and I see people doing just like the stupidest stuff, and I'm like, where are you getting your information? But it's as fitness professionals, I think that some of us, or sometimes we're so engrossed in our community and reading each other's stuff that we don't see that the 99% of other people are still, doing side bends and round back deadlifts and other atrocious things when they should be foam rolling. And there are a lot more beneficial things that they could be doing and they just don't know. And maybe it's because the information is just not presented in a way that they're able to understand it. And then, so 101, that gives people, they see that that's the entrance. I like that.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal. So let's hopefully people see it that way. That's the goal.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that you help people improve their mobility, even like inside the gym, outside the gym? Can you give me, you see sometimes like one instant fix to get your shoulder moving the way it should. Maybe you don't have. Maybe there's no magic solution, but tell me what some of the tricks you use are.
Tricks. I have a lot of tricks on my sleeve. Let me grab them. Let me see what I got here. My big thing is, I would say, I don't have the exact fact or the number, the statistic, but I would say a lot of our population has poor posture. What I mean by that is, you look at thoracic spine that's overly hunched and flexed.
I'm sitting up better now that you said it.
Yeah, right. And you look at some people that their hips are cranked down to excessive flexion because they're sitting at the desk all day. Those two things to me are paramount. Probably the two top items that I see on a daily basis, whether it's in the performance center or it's out of the performance center or it's just whatever. I'm going to grab a coffee, or if I'm driving somewhere or seeing something, I visually see it every single day. And it's easy to fix if people understand why they need to get out of those positions for periods of time to let their body open up a little bit, and also how to do it in a quick and easy way. So you'll see a lot of people doing the half kneeling quad hip flexor stretch to open up the hips. Fantastic stretch. That's probably the number one stretch I give to people, or mobility drill rather, that can help them get out of certain pain patterns, lower back stiffness or pain and discomfort.
Yeah, I actually use that one myself. It's weird. Like, I'm thinking, why is my hip flexor going to help with my low back pain? But it's magic. It works when you do it right.
Yeah, and obviously we can dive into anatomy and why certain things do what they do because they cross joints and where they attach and the origin and all that stuff. But it's simple that if one side is flexed, it's bent this way. The other side's gonna, counteract to that. And if you open it up, oh my god, like it's a world of difference. It's like, I don't put my hands on people. It's not magic. It's simple. And again,
it's something that you can do on your own. No equipment necessary. Maybe something to lean on, depending on how you do it.
Exactly, and that's the thing too. There's different levels. So a simple half kneeling, wall mobility drill, like mobilization drill, where you half kneeling, your back toe is in the ground to keep the superficial line, from the back of the cranium all the way down to the back of the heel, and leaning forward, open up the hip capsule. Then we can progress with over, arm raise with the whole, the pattern on the side to get the lats and the obliques. And then we can, maybe if that's not enough for some, we can raise the box. We can add so many different little points of entry we can add to that. That's probably the number one item I give for hip mobility and lower back, to negate some pain, and also getting some thoracic extension in your life. How do we do that? Well, just lay on the ground flat, for everything flat. That's a simple way to get back to neutral. So we're going from overly flexed or hunched to neutral, and then if that's not enough, you can simply lay over a foam roller or lay over something that has a little bit of an arch to it, and just gently, very slowly and slowly go back into some extension, open up, getting some shoulder flexion, which aids in thoracic extension, and kind of get that mobility drill going as well. Probably the top two ones I give on a daily basis, multiple times.
Yeah, I try to do both those things either in my warm-up or my cool-down. It just makes me feel better.
Yeah, it's that simple.
Instantly, yeah.
It's that simple. If something makes you feel better, like, why would you not keep doing it? And oppositely, if something is bothering you, like, why would you keep doing that? Like, I commonly ask people, why, like, if you, like, would you bang your head on a wall constantly, repeatedly throughout the entire day until you bled? Probably not. So if your knee's bothering you when you squat or go into knee flexion patterns, why would you continue to do it?
No pain, no gain, Matt. No?
Say it again?
No pain, no gain.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, no, you didn't know, bro? Like, no pain, no gain. Like, that's the way to roll, right?
Yeah. No, that's the worst thing. And then, there's that classic article by Mike Boyle, if it hurts, don't do it. But people are obstinate, and they think that the only way to get stronger is to squat, even if it's hurting your hips. And so, we need to get that info out. Do you have videos on your YouTube of those two, the hip flexor stretch or the thoracic?
Yeah, I have plenty of videos. What I can do is we'll at the end of this blog, or maybe where you post it, or this podcast rather, I can give you those links and make it accessible for the viewers so that they can know specifically what I'm talking about. Perfect. And I'm sure you'll see by the way I speak about it now and in the videos that I'm a stickler for form, so doing it correctly versus just doing it. Big world of difference.
That's the other thing I wanted to say, especially with the hip flexor stretch. Maybe you will see people doing it in the gym, but a lot of times they're just cranking on their lower back. It's a very subtle shift forward with like a squeeze of the glute. So I'm sure you go into all that.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing I wanted to... Okay, so we talked a little bit, about the bands and what tools do you use to help people do corrective mobility?
Great question. So at birth, you're given one body, right? Mm-hmm. So, what I say is everyone should have the ability to use your own body, nothing else, in terms of reaching and access in certain, areas that we want to address. Cool. What I mean by that is not only will it allow you to educate yourself and learn and empower you, but you'll also, the whole, the Perform Better talks about learn by doing seminars and workshops. So my big thing is learning by doing, just using your body. Because, you're given one body, right? And, people will destroy their body. They'll do things to it that they wouldn't do. Like if they got a brand new Ferrari, right? Like you'd be waxing that baby. You'd be oiling it up, oil change, gas change every day. Well, why don't you treat your body the same? So the reason why I've kind of shifted my views to, now I'm not against foam rollers, soft tissue mobilization tools such as lacrosse balls and T-spine, tennis balls and wrist and bands. I use those things too, but I try to predominantly use, just my body if I can access that. Now, if I need to, supplement those with the foam roller, the lacrosse ball, and the band, then I'll do those and other items as well.
I really like the way you're saying that. And I think an analogy maybe would be that people say you have to master your own body weight before you progress to externally loaded exercises. So I need to own my push-up before I'm going to bench press heavy. Own a body weight squat before I'm going to add load. And it sounds much the same in terms of putting mobility on a progression where, okay, I'm going to get as much as I can with just thoracic extension. Like first I'm going to lie on my back and get into neutral. I don't need anything else. And then once I've achieved that, and I can progress from there to doing, draping my body over a foam roller and adding that component.
Definitely, yeah, and I agree, and that's the whole thing that kind of, and I think it's it's a topic that we can use on many levels, because you need to appreciate and respect and only take what your body will give you at that moment, whether that's mobility, accessing certain ranges, power, strength, and really like downstream, because what happens is, and you said it, like own your push-up, own the movement, the bare bones movement, own the hip hinge before you squat deadlift, own the push-up, the horizontal push before you bench press.
Yeah.
Like owning those movements, understanding the mechanics at play and what should be happening and moving and why, and how to engage your core properly, breathe properly, all these things kind of intertwine. Do that first. Like master the crap out of that. Master your movement. Master and own these patterns, these drills and exercises, and then progress and load. The same thing goes with, mobility drills, and everything has, an up switch and a down switch. Can you regress it for someone that can't access that? Can you progress it for someone that needs more? And I think the general public and the general clientele need to be educated and guided in this path, because if they don't know any better, they're going to continue doing what they think they should do rather than what they actually really should do. That's going to help them in the long run in terms of improving the overall, performance levels and overall health and, longevity.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. And then this ties right into my next question. On your website and in your writing, you talk a lot about self-empowerment, and just even what you just said about using your own body to access, better mobility. Why is self-empowerment so important when it comes to mobility?
I think it's a huge topic, and being able to empower yourself via movement, exercise, because at the end of the day, we're humans. Like, we're born to move. Through evolution,
I'm not born to sit at my computer like this for 8 hours a day?
No. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yep. You were born to be here for 8 hours, sometimes 9 or 10 hours a day. Be hunched up and then expect to do all these crazy cool things after work. And why does my spine hurt? Why does my hips hurt? Well, we weren't meant to be sitting at desks all day. Now granted, you need to work and make money, but I think there's wiser ways to do it. I think there's ways we can empower ourselves, and not just through motivation and mindset and psychological ways, because those are important too, very, very important. I'm going to do this. I believe I can. I'm going to do it. Versus, I'm going to give it a shot and we'll see what happens. Well, your level of success, your likelihood of success may not be as high now based on your beliefs of being able to do it or not. So self-empowerment to me means understanding, what you can and can't do, or rather, understanding what you can do and the reasons why you aren't able to access certain areas, and think about it, work your way around it, wrap your head around it, and figure out, strategically and logistically how to counteract that over a period of time. Because not only is that going to give you purpose and reason, it's going to put you on a path that's going to eventually help you in the long term. I think, I don't think there's a direct relationship with self-empowerment and mobility per se, but I think with overall health and performance, which mobility is a part of that under the umbrella term of health and performance, I think there's a huge, there's a gap there, there's a missing gap. You'll see sports psychology, you'll see motivational speakers and people that will help to enhance your mindset. Because at one point or another in lifting and exercising in mobility drills and stretching and recovery, there's a belief, you know what, I'm going to try this, I'm doing it, this is what I can do. But you're going to reach a certain plateau, a point where you're like, okay, I'm not sure if I can go any further. But that's when your mind kicks in, because a lot of things are much more mental than they are physical.
Yeah.
It's having that ability to come into that realm of, okay, now I can use my mind to access certain areas where I couldn't do it physically, but in the combination of mentality and physicality, I can get there through using my mind.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times your beliefs are self-limiting in lifting, and it sounds like also there's transfer to mobility where if you walk up to the bar that has 300 pounds on it and you say, okay, I'm not going to be able to pick this up, then no, you can't.
Yeah.
Or I can't do this chin up. No, you can't. But if you're saying yes, you can, or if you're saying like yes, I will be able. I mean, this is an extreme example, but yes, I can. I will be able to do a split. Versus, oh, I'll never do a split. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then something else that you mentioned or might be like setting goals. Just like I say, I want to deadlift 300 pounds in 6 months. I want to be able to get full flexion of my shoulder. And what do I need to do in order to get there? That's
exactly
something that I don't think
man.
many people talk about that is pretty important.
Very important.
Another thing, I have two questions that just came up as I was thinking, or as you were talking, kind of random, but what do you think of the standing desks? So like instead of me sitting here for 8 hours hunched over, having a desk that rises up. Is that better? Is that good?
Great question. Another good one. So it's funny you say that because a coworker of mine just got a standing one, and it's like that noise. It's like an elevator coming up.
Yeah.
Eric Cressy wrote a piece, I believe. I know he wrote one about people that sit at desks all day.
And he wrote one about people who stand all day as well. Yeah,
that was more recent. So my take is this. It's a simple general rule of thumb. Whatever position you spend the most time in each day, make sure to unglue yourself move out of that position every 25, 30 minutes. That's a general rule of thumb. Get up and move every 20 to 30 minutes, regardless if you're sitting.
Hold on just a second. I have to get up and stretch.
Oh, do it. So that's the thing. Like, people will argue, is it good to have neutral position in the core and the spine for, that's the best position. Well, yes, that's the most ideal position to be in. However, if you're going to be in neutral position all day for 8 hours, maybe you'll be too stiff, or maybe you'll be too on. What I mean by on is maybe your muscles in the spine and the integrity of everything, they're on for too long, your postural, breathing, core muscles. That's not good either. There's a fine balance here. I know people will say, oh, okay, everything in moderation. Oh, that works to a certain extent. So you don't want to be hanging out in extension all day. You don't want to be hanging out in flexion all day. You don't want to be hanging out in neutral all day. You want a nice, even flow of balance between the three. Like sometimes I'll hang on my computer desk like this. Then I'll go back to this. Then I'll come back here, get a nice little stretch. Then I'll come back here. Then I'll get a stretch here. I'm constantly moving because my level, this goes back to the level of us educating the people that need education. The level of awareness, self-awareness is not there. But when it's there, you'll know to jump in and out of positions based on what feels good and what doesn't feel good. So again, general rule of thumb, I don't dislike standing or sitting. I think the best thing to do is moving.
That's nice, yeah. So do you set like an alarm for yourself to remind yourself, or you just have an internal clock that says, okay, I need to get out of this position?
I have an internal clock that says, Matt, move now.
Yeah.
But again, like you got to think though, I've been reading, eating, breathing, sleeping this stuff for probably the past 7-8 years. So right. I think my level of consciousness and my level of awareness is a little higher than let's say someone who in the general population who like works a 9-to-5 desk job, because it's something I'm thoroughly passionate about and I care about. But do I think anyone can do it and it's easy for everyone? Yeah, of course. It just takes a matter of like being aware of it, setting reminders, and actually doing it because it's not going to kill you to get up every 20 minutes. Okay, go to the bathroom. Maybe grab a sip of water. Get up, stand up, do a little stretch, come back down. Get up, stand up, maybe do a squat, come back down. Or just get up, stand up, go for a walk, get a breath of fresh air, go for a bike ride, grab lunch. Whatever it may be, just get up, do it, come back. It only takes 10 to 15 seconds.
Right, and that could make a big difference. What about, I have a classmate who sits on a stability ball instead of a desk, or instead of a regular chair at her desk. What do you think of that?
So again, that comes back to the whole issue, the whole thing of If he's now, I'm imagining he's staying in just a physio ball. Is it where are his hips level? Are his hips sunk down?
Yeah, 90-90.
Yeah, so you say to yourself, your core musculature and the abdomen and all those breathing muscles posturally, they're going to be turned on. They're staying on for a period of time. So the whole idea behind a physio ball is, is it more comfortable to sit in? Probably, but does it still force you to keep your core muscles on? Yes. That's not a bad thing. Let's make sure that's clear. It's good to be able to use those muscles and understand how to incorporate, your transverse abdominis, your breathing muscles, your pelvic floor, all these things, how to tilt correctly in the pelvis and so on and so forth. But again, it comes back to, how often is he getting up to move out of those positions? Because, I think Kelly Streck talks a lot about this, is that, people that sit in a desk in a chair for a long period of time, we're essentially taking that gluteal fold and all those kind of that tissue on the posterior chain, noticeably on the glute, and we're essentially we're smushing it. We're really just like smushing and holding it down for long periods of time. It's going to take a lot more work in terms of ungluing that tissue and that fascia to adhere to the movements we want to use them in. And also, this is related to how much water we're drinking, because water content and how much water retention we have and how much we drink on a daily basis directly relates to how our fascia, that spider web that's around all our muscles and tissue, and it kind of cohesively keeps it closed and kind of compact, kind of like a hot dog casing would do to a hot dog meat. That's a bad analogy, but that's kind of the general way to think of it. Our fascia will relate to, its level of ability to move and suppleness is related to how much water content we have in our body, which, again, that jumps back to, if you get up and move quite often, the need to unglue ourselves from certain positions won't be as high if we just get up and move more. It's really that simple, but I think it needs to be hammered every single day.
Yeah. And I think what you said about, like, when you're sitting on the ball, your core muscles have to be engaged in order to do it correctly. But I feel like if you told everybody to go buy a physio ball, replace their chair at their desk with the ball, you might do well for 5 minutes, but as soon as, if your muscles fatigue, if you haven't built up to that, then it's actually probably not going to be good for you.
Like, don't put a Band-Aid on the problem. Fix the problem. Like, don't take an issue and sweep it under the rug and think about, okay, we'll address it later. We'll hide it for now. No. Like, literally address the issue at hand. That may be harder at first. It may take longer. But in the long run, it'll be way more rewarding, and you'll become way more self-sufficient in owning your movements, owning your body, and understanding that posture is one of the keys to eliminating certain levels of pain.
Very cool.
That's good.
Another thing that you've mentioned a few times is breathing. And I just want to ask you, I mean, I know there's like volumes and volumes about this stuff, but how do you incorporate it into your day-to-day practice?
Great question. Simple technique. This is from the Postural Restoration Institute, PRI.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they are incredibly educated and informative on the topics of breathing, which muscles to, grab, which ones don't to, how to breathe properly. I think it's posturalrestorationinstitute.com or posturalrestoration.com, but check them out for all the, obviously, further.
They actually just followed me on Twitter the other day.
Yeah,
and
great.
I have like 60 followers on Twitter. I don't know how to use Twitter.
Twitter's tough to get more followers.
Yeah, but I was like,
can we cut this part of it?
I was like, PRI's following me? That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, oh my God, they're following. This is great. Like, they're huge. We actually had two people who have been to like 3 or 4 of their courses present at our facility this like 2 or 3 times actually. Like, very, very intellectual knowledge, like a lot of capabilities there, knowledge that like we don't really think about, like why is right PEC good and bad, how to get out, left AIC. It makes you think. It's cool.
Yeah.
But some of the, I guess we can cut back now. Some of the stuff I use for breathing it's very simple. I break it down. I may not give like all these anatomical terms because I don't think it's very important to give to the general population. When we're talking coach to coach, or rather scientist to scientist, it's good to use that stuff because we're on the same level in terms of translation.
Yeah.
But general public, I'll just say, okay, let's do some fat belly breathing. What does that mean? So instead of saying let's do some diaphragmatic breathing into your lower abdomen, rather than using your above your chest and getting all that stress and your all the neck muscles kind of keeping those flared up.
Yeah.
Simply put your hands on your belly or your core, your belly button rather.
Mm-hmm.
Inhale through your nose. As you inhale through your nose, think about pushing your hands out and making that fat belly, thus fat belly breathing. But making sure the core, the chest and upper thoracic region stays down and the neck muscles don't tense up, because that means you're using them. We don't want to think it's going to be
inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Nose.
Yeah. Yep, and then think about pushing your belly out, so pushing your hands into your belly, pressure into your belly, which pushes into your hands. And also, when you exhale, longer exhalation than inhalation. So I think a general rule of thumb I got from Every Day is Game Day by Mark Verstegen out of Athlete Performance. They talk about this breathing chart. And roughly it's talking about like 3 to 6 seconds of inhalation, depending on what level you're at, what you reached. And in terms of exhalation, breathing out, it's anywhere from like, I think 4 to 5 to like 6 or 7 seconds. So it's obviously more, so less in, more out. So like an example would be, let's do like a 3 0 6, or 3 seconds in, 0 second pause, and 6 seconds out. So it'd be now.
I feel better already, by the way. More relaxed.
There we go. Right? So now, is it important to have people breathing for hours on end? No, that's not the goal.
Yeah.
Teach them a simple breathing cue. The one I got from PRI is the 90-90 hip bridge with, breathing. That's the one against the wall.
Yeah.
Hips and knees are at 90. You may use a balloon, a straw, a ball between the knees. Hips go into internal rotation.
I've tried it a couple times, and to be honest, I can't figure it out. I think I need some help.
Well, yeah, they have a legitimate link to their write up. I think it's maybe 4 or 5 pages. They have a video.
I read that too, man.
Yeah.
But I think it's as simple as what you just said.
Yeah.
3 and 6 out, and then if you want to progress it, you get the balloon, you get the straw, you lie on your back, you get into position.
But is that applicable for everyone? Well,
yeah. I'm
not sure. I mean, if you have a client coming in who just wants to, get after and work hard, okay, let's keep it basic and simple. But if you have someone come in and say, hey, look, I want to know why and learn, that's when you kind of, okay, here's my toolbox, here's what I can teach you. So I think, breathing is tremendous in terms of performance. I think Charlie says it best in that breathing is the keyhole into the nervous system. Don't quote me on that. You might have to check his words, but that's pretty much what he summed it up to. If you can breathe properly, if you can kind of use that funnel the right way, the way it's supposed to be used, kind of like Dr. Mark Chang says, that kind of that funnel, that canister, you're going to be great in terms of performing better, posturally, fitness, health, and all these other great areas, because breathing is tremendous in terms of fixing your posture, fixing certain gait, fixing how you stand, how you sit, how you move. If you can access the breathing properly, it'll help you leaps and bounds in your overall health and performance.
And so do you use these drills at the beginning of the workout, like yoga does it, or at the end to kind of jumpstart recovery, or even in between sets of strength exercises? How do you program it?
Yeah, so I'll use it everywhere, to be honest. I mean, I think first, to keep it simple, we'll go from the beginning. I may teach them the first time, okay, let's try 10 to 12 breaths here. Get it, understand it, learn it, know it. Now, we're only going to use that like very small moving forward. Okay, once they've owned their breathing and their movement and their posture, I'm not going to bring it up again until I feel like, okay, they're doing TRX rows or they're doing goblet squats or back squats.
And they're holding their breath. Yeah.
Then you say, okay, take this breathing, this basic way of breathing, and now utilize it when you're performing in the weight room, in the gym, and also now remind yourself in your daily life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because it's one thing to be able to do it while I'm sitting here, but quite another to access it when I'm under load.
And it's as simple as yoga. I mean, I've been to a handful of yoga classes. I think yoga is tremendous. There's a reason why it has stood the sands of time, so to speak. It's been around for a long time because it allows people to relax, to lower stress, and also the component of breathing is extremely monumental in yoga.
Yep.
And I
Martial
think
arts too.
Say it again?
Martial arts as well.
Yeah, like understanding and respecting how to breathe properly, it allows you to access so many other avenues that you may not have been able to access if not learning how to breathe properly.
Cool. Another thing that I saw, I think I saw a video on YouTube. You were showing a flow.
Yeah.
It probably has other names, but it's basically like you do a bunch of kind of mobility drills back to back to back. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Or what it's for, why?
Yeah. So, in yoga, I believe what they call like certain yoga flows are, I believe is like the pattern of how they distribute their certain. Okay, we're doing, warrior one. We're going into pigeon. We're going into these different flows, these different like patternizations. Like, okay, I'm going from one move to the next one, kind of like you said, back to back to back. And my take on it is, I'm just exploring movement.
Having fun with it, maybe?
Say it again?
Having fun with it.
Exactly. I'm having fun with it, but I'm also learning by doing. I'm exploring movement, and I'm seeing what works and what doesn't work. So I've kind of experimented a little bit with some hip mobility drills, some thoracic drills. Again, hip and thoracic, I think, two areas that needed a lot, depending on where we are in the chain. But for the most part, I think the general population needs a lot of hip and a good amount of hip and thoracic mobility, extension, and so on and so forth. But I've experimented with some hip mobility drills, thoracic mobility drills, and kind of connected them. Like, okay, if I do, let's say a flare. I mean, you'll see these in the videos, but I just kind of connect the dots where they can be connected, and I seem to find them useful if I'm doing them before a heavy lift, a certain exercise, maybe a run, whatever it may be. I found it to be helpful for me to kind of connecting a few, maybe 2, 3, or 4, to kind of make it my own original flow.
Cool. And I think that goes back to self-empowerment. Like if you can come up with a few good drills that you need that go together, that's pretty awesome. And it's fun. It's playing with the movement.
It's definitely fun. You're playing. That's what we're doing. We're playing.
And so like you said, we'll link to one of those in the notes on the podcast. So tell me. We've mentioned a few people, Kelly Starrett, Charlie Weingroff, Dr. Andrea Spina. Who are your biggest, who are your go-tos for this stuff? And how do you integrate their approaches when they sometimes are competing and offering different ideas?
Yeah, so great question. I pull. I know this may be a generic answer, but I'll try to make it non-generic if I can. I'm making a pot of soup, right? And I like variety. I like options. And I like things that I can learn from and understand why they work. So the pot of soup analogy, I will throw everything that I can apply that I've learned from certain individuals and that is useful and informative. I'll throw it in the pot and I'll use it. And I'll stir that pot up, and I'll continue to take what I've learned from various individuals, whether Mike Boyle, Eric Cressy, Mark Verstegen at Athlete Performance, Charlie Weingroff, Kelly Starrett, Andrea Spina, Gray Cook, and all these great, profound names in our health and
I think you forgot Travis Pollen.
Travis, the fitness pollinator, he's the one in there. He's buzzing around. He's about to jump in. He doesn't want to jump in yet. But so what I'll do is I'll kind of intertwine these thoughts and ideas. And again, you're right. There's going to be some overlap. But I think my final decision on what I essentially utilize with my clients in rehabilitation, in performance, in strength conditioning, in sports performance, in fitness, and general health and wellness is. What I can apply the best to that individual, I will use. So I'll essentially take from all these people and I'll use it on my own, through my own terms. And I think the two people, and you mentioned it, and I'll mention it again because they're that good. The two people who I try to mold my work like and myself like, and kind of in that hybrid, therapeutic performance role is Dr. Kelly Starrett and Dr. Charlie Weingroff, because I really think they've opened a door for newcomers like myself who are kind of in that hybrid role of movement and performance, who aren't just a trainer or a coach or someone who trains clients and a performance coach, but they understand the mechanics, the movement, the rehabilitation, injury prevention, the therapeutic side, because there is a direct relationship, actually an overlapping of the two that needs to be appreciated across a wide spectrum. Now, I just really see an opening there, and to me, I find it most satisfying if I can take someone who's, let's say you have someone, high-level athlete, let's say LeBron James, for example. He's at 100. He's at the top of the totem pole, elite athlete, high threshold. Well, someone who just came off, let's say a non-athlete, general public client, 45 years old, let's say he's a male, came off torn ACL, was playing pickup basketball, we'll put him at 0, low threshold. I get more satisfaction out of taking 0 threshold client, bringing them back up to 100, versus taking the 99, out of 100 and bring them to 100. I just find more satisfaction in the whole building up process from ground zero, because, like I said, there's a complete overlapping of the two, and I really think there's an open door there for these hybrid kind of therapeutic, like really movement therapists and people that can kind of bridge the gap between both. That it's wide open, and that's something I find to be most satisfying for me.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous gap, and it's awesome that you can draw from so many different sources, and then, like you said, you use the best thing, the one that works for that individual. You have a big toolbox, and you don't need to be like religious about one particular style of corrective mobility when you have a wide array of tools to choose from. You just use what works.
Yeah, and I think that like we talk about educating the people that need to be educated. I think us as really movement guides, like we're trainers, we're coaches because we coach people. We're in the fitness field and health and wellness and performance. But I think that having a bigger toolbox and a wider array of skills will only help the people you work with.
Definitely. So you have a workshop coming up, right?
Yeah, actually a few.
Yeah. God damn.
It's pretty exciting. It's kind of all new to me. I got one coming up actually
in Boston
next Saturday. Yeah. So I'm from Medford, Massachusetts. I work in Woburn, Mass, and technically I'm from Boston because that's what everyone says, right? I'm from Boston. Like if you live near Boston, you're from Boston.
Actually, it's funny. When I went to visit Eric Cressy's and Tony's place over the summer, I was like, oh, they're in Boston. So I got an Airbnb, and it turned out that I was still an hour and a half from their place, which was still a half hour from Boston.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I thought Boston was Boston, but apparently not.
Well, yeah, I mean, like people will say Boston because it's like the Mecca, it's the hub. It's like, if I'm from New York, I'm gonna say, oh, I'm from New York City, but
when you're from 2 hours outside in New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, like that's how they kind of roll out here. But so technically, but I live like 10, 15 minutes from Boston. But anyways, to the workshop.
Everybody claims that. I don't believe it for a second.
Boston. We live like 5 minutes from Boston. Like you can jump and I'll be there. But so I'm doing one on my own. It's my first one ever, so I'm pretty pumped for it. I'm excited. I've had a fair number of people reach out to attend. I think we're in the 25, 30 range.
Cool.
So it should hopefully I can deliver what I promised. So we'll see. I plan for it, prepare for it, so I'm ready to give them what they want and need.
That's
but
awesome.
It's going to be a mobility and recovery workshop. And it's really going to mirror like what we discussed. Like how do you fix your posture? How do you incorporate self-maintenance every day? Going through some lower body, upper body mobility drills and sequences that I use, kind of some flows, and just asking them questions like what they want to see maybe for a part 2 somewhere down the line. And then from that, I'm doing specific to youth, middle school, high school, collegiate soccer players at the same facility that I work at Athletic Evolution in Woburn, Mass, just like a performance training center. I'm doing soccer injury prevention workshop, for those athletes that need it. So primarily ankle, knee and hip mobility, posture, positioning, strengthening, and how to prevent injury through certain drills. After that, I just got invited by Tyler English Fitness out in Connecticut. A friend of mine that I used to work with in Woburn is now the director of sports performance over there in strength conditioning. So I got invited to do a workshop over there, a 3-hour workshop in the near future, probably within the next 1 to 2 months. So I'll take the drive up there for them. Again, same topics, I think, but elongated over a period of more than 1 hour, so 3 hours. And then I will be teaming up with a good friend of mine. She's local. She's really popular in our field. Her name is Stacy Shadler. So Stacy Shadler Strength is her what she runs. And we'll be doing one, I believe, on one of her venues. The stuff hasn't really been released yet, but it's going to be called Problem Solving for Pain and Injury Prevention Workshop.
You heard it here first.
Say it again?
The audience heard it here first.
Oh, boom! There it is. Knowledge bomb just dropped. Like, now you know. I feel like I'm releasing a mixtape or something. Oh, it's coming out in the streets. You got to get it. But yeah, so that's something that really hasn't been talked about much, but her and I are still in the works with that. But again, it's going to be along the same lines of how to educate and empower yourself to bulletproof your body for long-term success and performance and health via injury prevention techniques and modalities that you can incorporate and apply right away. And that's the big thing. Like, while you're in pain, how you can fix it to our best abilities, because we're not doctors, but the way we can help you the most.
We're better than doctors.
Yeah. Well, it depends on who we're talking to. Maybe that's a conversation we have off air. But, but those are the 4 I have lined up. I'm very, very humbled and gracious that I'm having these opportunities, and I'm very excited to not just deliver, but over-deliver, because if people are asking for my help and my advice, it's my duty and my job to give them my best knowledge, and anything I do to help them, that's what I'm here for.
That's awesome. So we talked, you have the YouTube site, which we'll link to. You have your own blog, mobility101blog.com, and people can also find you on Facebook and Twitter under the same thing, Mobility101.
And Instagram. I just switched over on Instagram, so it's at Mobility101. Same exact on Twitter, like you said. The Facebook page of Mobility101 and Matthew Ibrahim on Facebook. And for the viewers out there, please know that if you friend me on any of these accounts and like my page or email me or call me, I will give you a response, and I will be sure to like your stuff as well.
He will. He'll respond 5 minutes later, and it'll be like a 2-page email, and you'll be like, "Dude, I just asked you like a simple question. Why you gotta come at me with all this information?" No, it's been fantastic. Just like I said, we've only been interacting for a few months now, but I've already learned a ton from you, and
same with you, man. Same with you. Trust me.
You just blew my mind for the last 45 minutes or so. So that's all the questions that I had. Is there anything else you can think of?
Not really. I mean, I think it's just a matter of people just believing that they can do things and trying things, and the whole thing of us talking about exploring movement and knowing that if you're in pain, if you're having injuries, there may be ways to get out of it if you empower yourself and learn the simple techniques of posture, mobility, injury prevention techniques that can help you kind of get out of the pain cave, so to speak.
Yeah, I heard Kelly Starrett talk about the pain cave one time, and that was fascinating for me because I was doing his couch hip flexor stretch, and I was in agony, and my face, you could see it. So he says, keep a relaxed face, breathe, and that kind of tricks your
nervous system.
Nervous system into relaxing. But if you're there like in agony and you stop breathing, your muscles are going to shut down too. So, like you said, all this stuff there's a lot going on up here. It's not just the musculoskeletal physiology of it.
Big time.
But that'll be for episode, the next episode that you're on of the podcast.
Let's do it.
Cool. Thanks so much for chatting with me.
Thanks a lot, brother. Cool. I appreciate it.
All right.